Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 9, Episode 97. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for tuning in this Tuesday, Steelers Nation. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing better than you are. Everybody send Alex some flowers. He's not feeling too well with...
It's allergies, so don't send me flowers. Thanks for trying to kill me, Dave.
Send him some chocolates or whatnot. He's trying to play. He's playing hurt today. In all seriousness, hey, it's Tuesday. It's the off season. It's the league meetings are going on. That means we have something else to talk about now. I admire the way the NFL calendar is set up to give us a kind of a constant flow that really, people say, what do you do? I say, I talk Steelers 365 days, out of a year, and really it's easy to do the way they have the calendar set up. But first and foremost, let's kind of pick up sort of where we left off with the last podcast, and I gave you some homework to do over the weekend. I know a few listeners took us up on that homework as well too. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I just want to make sure I got your thoughts on the player, and that of course is David Long out of West Virginia. I did a long contextualization of him, of all of his splash plays. I really got a sense that from a splash play perspective, really his tape stuck out a lot more than that of Devin Bush's. So I know that you've watched a couple of games on him since we last talked. What are your thoughts on David Long Jr. out of West Virginia?
Yeah, I don't want to make any comparisons to Bush or Long yet. I don't think I'm ready for that yet, but I put on a couple of games of Long last night. Obviously want to see more, but I see why you like him. I can see why the Steelers like him as that, athletic sideline-to-sideline linebacker that I think is really instinctive and process as well, and is able to shoot some of those gaps and has the ability to make some plays in the backfield. Now, he was just a zone dropper in coverage, and, I don't know exactly how much of an impact he'll make there. I don't think it's a liability there. And I want to see him finish plays more. But yeah, I like it. I like the angles he takes. I like the effort that he plays with. And if you can't get a Devin Bush or a Devin White, in the first round, I can certainly see David Long being that, maybe round 3 kind of guy.
What stuck out the most that you didn't care for about his game? I mean, look, obviously we're not talking about a first round guy here, and I don't want people to make it to feel like I'm talking about, well, this is a guy that should be in the first round talk here. But I have seen some talk about saying, well, this is a 5th, 6th round guy, and I think he's far from that. I mean, realistically, is he a 3rd to 4th round guy? And if you don't grab one of the top inside linebackers, where does he fit in the hierarchy? I mean, is he top 5 off the ball inside linebacker? Is he top 7 off the ball, linebacker?
Like I said, I don't want to get into those concrete terms of comparing him to other guys right now, but I do think I'm going to probably come out with somewhere around like a 3rd round, grade evaluation on him. So yeah, he's not a first round pick, and the things I don't like, again, I need to see more. I put on kind of his better games first, but I want to see him play under control. I want to see him finish plays. I think he can get a little too... kind of the way Shazier was, where he's playing so fast, it's hard for him to slow down and come to balance and make a stop and play a little sound. But I think overall his run flows are excellent. I think overall he's a disciplined player. I don't think he's too reckless in that regard. But whenever it comes to making the play, finishing the tackle, I think he can get a little bit reckless and cause him to miss more than he should.
Okay, so that's a guy that I want to. I'm going to try to dig a little bit into. Not a whole heck of a lot, but I want to see if I can find some coverage aspects of him. The knock on him, one of the knocks on him is we're not going to have a 40 time or any kind of measurables on him because of a high ankle sprain that he suffered at the Senior Bowl. So we're not going to have the analytics side to kind of discuss on him. But I look back and I think I saw somewhere on pre-college or one of those scouting websites or whatnot that I think he ran something along the lines of 4.5 something. 40-yard dash. I can't remember exactly, but I remember thinking, oh, okay, well, that's fine there. I did look at his birthday, and according to everything I've seen on his birthday, he is young, Alex. I mean, and in fact, I think one of the listeners wrote in something about that and said I was right when it came to his age and all. So we'll read a few more emails that we got from listeners on David Long a little bit later on in the show there. But once again, his measurables from him being just under 6 foot is going to be a knock on him. A little bit light at, what is he, 227 at the combine, something like that. So I think that's probably going to be a little bit of a knock on him. And also, as we mentioned, the fact that we're not going to have the full kind of analytics and the times on him as well, too. Now switching back, kind of turning the tables here, the more I watch of Devin Bush, the more I kind of don't think he's a slam dunk top 15 player, and really I'm starting to think that maybe this guy isn't slam dunk top 25 player. Now, here's the other thing. Now, throw his tape aside. Let's look at him from the from the analytics department, from the Steelers Depot analytics department here. Him being under 6 foot and being regarded as a first round prospect. Do you know you have to go all the way back to 2006 with Ernie Sims out of Florida State to find an off-the-ball linebacker drafted in the first round that measured in under 6 foot? Now, that's just an FYI. It obviously has there is no sign outside of the 2019 draft that says you must be this high to be drafted, in the first round. But look, you've done a lot of study on the analytics involved when it comes to Steelers in certain positions that they draft, as far as height, weight, 40 time, underwear, Olympic, measurements and stuff like that. Does it at all bother you that we're dealing with anomaly here in Bush with him being under 6 foot?
No, it really doesn't, and I understand why you asked that question, and it is going to be knock against him. His size has always been something I'm sure people have looked at and said, you're too small to do X, Y, and Z or play this position, and he's just gone out and proven people wrong. I mean, in the first round, yes, there's been very few players under 6 foot, but there's just not a lot of linebackers in general under 6 foot, so I understand why the numbers are so low, and this team has taken Sean Spence in the third round, several years ago, who was under 6 foot, and Devin White is what, how much taller is he? Like an inch taller, if that. I mean, so I think we're really splitting hairs, and I don't want to get too caught up in the height. I want to look at the tape on his play.
Looking back at the combine measurements for one Ernie Sims here, it looks like he measured in at 5'11" and an eighth. 231 pounds. He ran the 40 in 4.5 seconds. Now remember, this is 2006. 4.5 second 40-yard time. His 10-yard split was 1.54 seconds. Do we have a 10-yard split on Bush?
I don't think so. The NFL Network did a terrible job of providing that information.
They absolutely did do a.
I assume it was good though. I mean, you're running 4.4, 3. Your 10 split's pretty good.
Let's see. His 20-yard short shuttle time was 4.23. Compare that to Bush, which was 4.23. So he matched up there. 3 cones, 7.32 seconds for Sims. That number for Bush was much better at 6.93. 41-inch vertical for Sims, and Bush had a 40.5. Broad jump 10 foot 5 inches for Sims, and Bush was 10 foot 4 inches. Sims was ahead of his time as far as an athlete goes back in, or for an inside off the ball linebacker. What would that have been 13 years ago? Wow. 25 reps on the bench for Sims versus 21 for Bush. So yeah, Bush might be a modern era I don't know if we can say that, but just going back to 2006 or a modern year Sims here. But I just think it's worth bringing up. And we're in the final kind of stages, the final 4-week run. I think there's 30 days or 29 days until the draft takes place. Though this is really going to be the time where we've kind of puffed up a lot of these athletes, and now comes a time where you start shooting as many holes in them, as you possibly can. So I don't have a great, I'm not as big on the hype train on Devin Bush's tape as most, I guess is what I'm saying. I think he is a first to second round player. I just think the gap between him and White is pretty big, and it kind of concerns me with some of these other things.
Well, like I said, with the back in the day, 15, 20 years ago, size was more important because you had to bang around against the run because you were taking on fullbacks on lead dive plays and stuff like that. So I understand why the size was important then. But today, what traits are important for an inside linebacker? Somebody that can stay on the field all 3 downs, somebody that can cover these small running backs on angle routes and flare routes and screen passes, somebody that can cover and take on the tight end in man coverage and run down the seam or get depth in cover too. Those are the traits that are important, and those are the things I think Devin Bush does well. So I don't worry about the size too much. What do you see what are your concerns with Devin Bush, and what's the gap between Devin White and Devin Bush in your eyes?
I just think the play, and really you could throw David Long into this too, just the playmaking aspect, the plays that the others make on tape. We're supposed to talk about what these guys can do, not what they can't do, right? It's just not his splash play tape to me. Just isn't as overly impressive as the other two that I just mentioned there. And kind of I get the feeling, Mack Wilson, that's one of the things that stuck out with me about Mack Wilson right from the get-go. Now, unfortunately for Mack Wilson, he was the first player I think I turned the tape on this offseason. But right from the get-go, I kind of had thrown him out of the bathwater. If you remember, saying, I don't know if this guy should be talked about as a first-round draft pick. You just don't see some of the playmaking that you would kind of expect from a guy in that position. And really with Bush, I kind of getting the same feeling with him.
Yeah, I mean, I get the numbers aren't as strong if you stack them, next to each other. But I will say this. Well, 2 thoughts. One is that, I think scheme had some sort of factor into it. I think you look at somebody like Rashawn Gary out of Michigan, who's probably viewed as a top 10 or as a top 15 pick, a defensive lineman, and people say, well, where was his production? And you hear Don Brown, the defensive coordinator for the Wolverines, talk about it and say, the scheme, we didn't let him play to his full potential because the way the scheme demanded it. We had him take on blocks. We didn't have him one gap as much as he could have, one gapped, and that hurt his numbers. And I wonder if there's some sort of explanation similar for Devin Bush. I mean, obviously it won't be the same as a defensive lineman, but I wonder if scheme had an impact, the overall talent on that Michigan defense, I think maybe had some sort of impact. And, just because you didn't have super gaudy numbers in college doesn't mean that you can't have it in the NFL. Look at Ryan Shazier. Shazier had how many interceptions with the Steelers? 6, 7, whatever the number was. He had 1 pick at Ohio State over 3 years. And so, I think if you see the skills translate and you put them in a different scheme, give them more freedom, let them make plays, they can make plays.
And if they did, and I'd have to go back and look a little bit more in depth, but if indeed Michigan did try to cover up their off the ball linebackers a little bit more, than they usually would. That's a little bit of a concern there as well too, because look, the Steelers used to be notorious for keeping their linebackers covered up and let them play run and chase and hit and just keep them clean. But obviously that's not the case any longer. They want their defensive tackles, penetrating in gaps a lot more these days. So, when one of the knocks definitely on Bush is once you get somebody out to him on the second level, it's kind of easy to keep him away from the ball carrier.
Yeah, but that was the same with Shazier, and it's all about learning hand use. And if you think you can get some technique, and he's gotten some really good coaching, Bush has with Don Brown as his DC, it's something that can be overcome. Shazier really took that next step and became from a good player with talent to a great player who really realized that talent once he learned how to defeat blocks instead of trying to run around them and go around them and stay on his feet. So if he can do that, then you have a really, really good player.
I'll tell you this. I think Devin Bush is obviously is a guy that I feel strongly will be on the board still when the Steelers pick at 20 overall.
Really?
Yeah.
You think that much?
Yeah, I think he will be on. Definitely will be on the board when the Steelers pick it at 20 overall. Because I think White, is obviously superior to him, so he's going to more than likely, be off the board. And then you just kind of look at, there's all these other positions in the draft. There's probably going to be a couple of quarterbacks go off the board as well too. I don't view Devin Bush as one of the 19 best, when you throw in the quarterbacks, one of the 19 best players in this draft.
It's hard to see him get past Cincinnati at 11, Denver, wherever Denver's picking, and you see the 3 inside linebackers last year that went top 18, whatever, top 20, whatever the number was. It's hard to see that happen with Devin Bush getting to 20.
Normally in the past, though, we've seen kind of off the ball linebackers poo-pooed on, though,
Yeah, but we haven't seen him run 4-4 and get poo-pooed on.
Yeah, that's true, too. I mean, that's where I am right now on Devin Bush.
All right. Hey, I appreciate the candor. I mean, I'll be happy if you don't have to trade up for him. Now, if he falls to the Steelers at 20, is he your guy? Or you think would you consider passing on him for somebody else?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not to the point where I would say X over X.
But do you think Devin Bush is a slam dunk if he's sitting there at 20?
I think he's obviously in play. I mean, look, they were at his pro day.
Well, sure. But in your opinion, would he be a slam dunk if you're Kevin Colbert sitting at 20 and Devin Bush is there? It doesn't sound like it from everything you've said.
Yeah, in other words, am I putting myself in what Kevin Colbert would do?
Yes, in your personal opinion, is he a slam dunk pick?
Well, my personal opinion don't make it mean a damn.
I know, but that's our podcast. I can't get. I tried to call Kevin Colbert earlier. You didn't answer.
Yeah.
So
I think he would probably be the pick. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think he could fall. I mean, I said it's unlikely, but it's possible. But I still think, end of the day, you're going to have to probably trade up at least a couple spots to get him. And I think, again, Cincy at 11 really scares me because I think he could go there.
All right. Where to? Real quick. We got some pro days yesterday. The Iowa pro day was on Monday. And as far as we can tell, unless anybody can send me an email and find me proof otherwise, we're almost positive Mike Tomlin was not at the Iowa Pro Day because he was in Phoenix, Arizona at the league meetings after first meeting Steven Nelson, I think, for breakfast. Tomlin made it back to the Biltmore Estates in Arizona for the league annual meetings, and then obviously had the interview with the media and Missy Matthews afterwards. So we're almost positive Mike Tomlin was not at the Iowa Pro Day. I can't find any proof that Kevin Colbert was at the Iowa Pro Day. So if any of you listening think you may have found proof, and I've checked kind of all the papers this morning and the Twitter machine and all like that, I cannot find any instance of Kevin Colbert being at the Iowa Pro Day. Send it to me if you found any evidence of that. And that's look, I mean, I know the date coincides with the league meetings and all, but Iowa is kind of, I guess, close enough to Arizona that Kevin Colbert could have easily probably gotten away and gone to that pro day if he really thought it was significant. So, what does that mean about a guy like, Hawkinson possibly being the first round pick? And I think the more that we kind of get on Noah Fant at this point, I'm not convinced Noah Fant is a guy that's going to be in play at 20 overall and really in the first round overall. I think his drop percentage is a little bit worrisome there. I think he's more of a second, maybe early third round guy there. So with is there anything we can read into maybe Kevin Colbert possibly not being at that Iowa Pro Day?
Yeah, I mean, we know the history and how important it is for first-round picks and having one of those two guys, Tomlin or Colbert, be at the workout. Now, the Steelers were there in some capacity because we know Iowa said that all 32 teams had showed up at some point. One team showed up early, I think, for the workout, and everyone else showed up for the day of. So I will say this, is that I know that generally speaking, the Steelers' first-round picks aren't brought in for pre-draft visits because they go to them, and you don't have to bring them in after you go through the pro day and have dinner with them and all that stuff. But if you want to claim Hawkinson or Fant to be the pick, then one of those guys or both have to be brought in for a pre-draft visit. If they're not, it's a really hard sell to tell me that a Hawkeye is going to be the 20th pick.
Yeah, absolutely. And those two really, I mean, they've been the talk of being the guys, right? I mean, as far as first tight end off the board, right?
Yeah. Now again, there's guys in the later rounds or in other rounds that I like. Amani Hooker, I think, could be a real strong pick in the second, third round. But in terms of first round pick, you to not see those guys there. You know, that's a pretty telling, even with the owners' meetings going on.
And with Hawkinson being an underclassman on top of it, you would think he's going to be brought in for a pre-draft visit if he wants a chance. You know.
Yeah, if they're not there, then that has to happen. And again, generally speaking, the first round picks aren't brought in for pre-draft visits because you met them at the pro day. But considering that they weren't there, then you're going to have to because you're not drafting this guy blind like that.
Okay, and then the Iowa State pro day is today. Is Kevin Colbert going to be there to see the Butler do it?
That'd be interesting. I mean, maybe, but we know that they still they show up to places with first-round talent, but they also generally show up to places with a lot of talent. And Iowa State is kind of light beyond Hakeem Butler. So I'm curious if they would possibly just decide, let's not go to the pro day, let's just bring him in for a pre-draft visit because we're not going to spend our time and resources to look at just one guy. But we'll see. I don't know what time they work out today, but we'll find out in a couple hours, I'm sure.
Right, and anytime we find anything like this, we'll, of course, be tracking it on SteelersDepot.com. Butler...
I think we have the best tracker. I work hard for that. We have. I got Dennis McInnes, the scouting intern. I know what he looks like, and I know when to identify him, so I'm patting myself on the back a little bit.
Yeah, and other people, other sites copy it. It's so good.
Yep. Hey, I guess it means you're doing something right.
All right. It looks like we do have a report here from Mark Lane, managing editor of the Texans Wire, that Kevin Colbert is present at the Texas A&M Pro Day.
A&M. You got
So who would that? Who would that be?
I don't know about first-round picks. You got Jay Sternberger, the tight end. You got a couple defensive linemen. Dalen Mack, who I really liked, is like a round four kind of guy. Kiki, was it Kingsley Kiki, I think is his name, with profile. But I'm trying to think, in terms of top guys, I don't think they have a top guy.
Yeah, and here's another one from along with a picture here from Justin Woodard from KAGS Sports, Texas A&M Pro Day. Representative from all 32 teams is here. Pittsburgh GM Kevin Colbert and San Antonio Commanders GM Daryl Johnson are also in attendance to see 20 Aggies work out today. So.
Not going to Iowa State then.
It doesn't sound like he's going to go to. I mean, how long would it take to get from Texas A&M to Iowa State? You know, so yeah. I found that quite interesting there. So not at Iowa State.
Let me check the schedule. I assume the times are similar, but let me just see. Maybe unless Iowa State's like really late in the day, maybe you could buzz up with Rooney's private jet or something. Let's see, at 26.
I think it's to be determined.
The schedule here, Iowa was to be determined. This says Iowa State takes place at 8:30 a.m.
Oh, okay.
So he's definitely not going there. Texas A&M was 9:15.
All right, now who was invited to the combine from Texas A&M?
Like I said, Sternberger, the tight end, which could be a probably later day two kind of guy. Dalen Mack, the nose tackle, played running back in high school. I like him a good bit. Kingsley Kike, another defensive lineman we've profiled for the site. Those are the names that are coming to mind right now. McCoy, I think the center. Not that they're going to take a center, but Eric McCoy is one of the top centers in the draft behind Bradbury.
You say they're not going to take a center, but
okay. Probably won't.
Where do you have him going?
I haven't watched him, but I've heard he's going to be maybe a fringe first rounder, probably more likely a second round pick.
Okay, all right. All right, well, we have found Kevin Colbert for today here. All right, what direction? Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin both talked, answered quite a few questions at the league meetings in Arizona. What do you want to start off with here?
Well, Wow, I don't know which direction I want to go with. I mean, I guess we can talk about Tomlin's reaction to losing Bell and Brown, and really, it's not a surprise at all. I've basically quoted Tomlin before he even talked to the media that he was going to say, we need volunteers, we don't need hostages, we need guys who want to be here, are going to buy into the system, and if they don't want to be here, we're going to move on. So really, nothing shocking or surprising from Tomlin, but it is his first comment since the AB trade.
Yeah, we can't do this with hostages. We need volunteers. We need good players, good guys that want to be here. He goes on to say, if guys can't check those boxes, then it's probably best for all parties involved, we go our separate ways. I mean, what does it matter who says what at this point, I guess, right?
And then go ahead.
I thought the other thing that he reiterated, and he said it in the past, several times in so many different words, saying, look, I don't treat everybody the same, you know, and, he did admit about how all leaders need to find a better way to go about, I think, being better leaders in so many words, but he did at the same time praise Ben Roethlisberger and his leadership abilities. What else did he have to say about that aspect of it?
Yeah, really just saying everybody can be a better leader. We're always trying to improve. Just the typical Tomlin platitudes. And then you had AB on Twitter. What did he say? Because I finally got hit with that AB block button. It took a while. He said something about trading while I'm asleep, and then he forced it. I can't even parse.
Somebody told me that was a rap lyric or something. I don't know if it was. I haven't researched it.
You're asking the wrong guy. I figured you didn't research it. With Dr. Dre. Yeah, I don't know. So, but that's that. And was Tomlin asked if he thought he could go back and fix anything, or if he could have gone back and changed anything? Would he have changed anything?
Was he asked that?
I think he was asked something like that.
Yeah, I didn't hone in on that aspect of it. I mean, look, they're gone now. It's unfortunate all the way all that played out, but we'll obviously talk about it here and there. I mean, even Brandon Beane, the Bills general manager, was on Pro Football Talk a day or so ago talking about how that deal wasn't even as close as it was made out to be, that the negotiation process with Antonio Brown and his agent really even didn't even get off the ground, so to speak there. Mm-hmm. So if you want to here's the thing I don't understand before we go further with this. Why people make it sound like Kevin Colbert should have held out for a first or second round pick on this. And let's be honest here, there was only one team in play. And I said this almost right from the get-go. There was only really one team involved that was in serious consideration for trading for Antonio Brown that can handle all aspects of the trade, and that includes the contract on top of it, and that was the Oakland Raiders. And I'm fairly convinced that the Raiders knew this. Mike Mayock knew this. They set the parameters right from the get-go that those 3 first-round picks were going to be off the board. The second-round pick wasn't going to be in play either. People are saying, well, Kevin Colbert should have held on and just forced AB to sit out. What good would have all that done? People say, well, you're too much of a shrill for what the Steelers do and what Kevin Colbert does and this, that. No, I try to look at it all very objectively. If you've read Steelers Depot and if you've listened to the podcast enough, you've heard me get on Tomlin. You've heard me get on Kevin Colbert here. But some things I just don't think I don't think are warranted. And I kind of knew going in that his hands are going to be tied when you're dealing with what all Antonio Brown was saying and doing and all aspects involved here. And like I said, I'm thrilled that he got a 5th on top of the 3rd.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse here. I think we'll understand why the Steelers didn't have the leverage and couldn't get appropriate value for AB, and why it was, from objectively speaking, just not good value on the return. And knowing the position the Steelers were in and why that was, and why the Giants can get a lot more for Odell Beckham Jr. than the Steelers could AB. But like I said, I guess there's one thought in my mind. Could the Steelers have traded AB earlier? Was Colbert holding out for something better? Overplayed his hand, took too long to deal him, and then that dried up any potential suitors and really put him in a tough spot. I don't know that, and we'll never know that, I'm sure, but I do wonder if Colbert could have gotten maybe a second-round pick had he traded him a week or two prior to when he did.
Well, we don't know how long he was actually putting out feelers out there, though.
Well, I don't know that, but I assume it was prior, sometime before he traded him, a week or two before. I'm sure there were feelers and conversations. I mean, combine on, there was conversations happening.
Well, look, I mean, from the point on that I mean, they Kevin Colbert made it pretty clear at the combine, right?
But that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I'm sure serious discussions probably started to take place from the combine on. I think that's safe to say.
Yeah, but even so, you still had to give another team permission to talk to him, and there was still going to be the whole contract thing.
Sure.
And about waiting past the start of the new league year, like I've said time and time, people just don't. I think a lot of people chiming in on this don't understand the business that's related to football, and that's talking about come the start of the new league year. Teams want to have a good idea of where their cash and their cap is going to go. Now, do instances arrive where a player all of a sudden gets cut, i.e., say like a Joe Hayden, late in the offseason, where you have to decide, can you go out and attack that guy and fit that guy underneath your cap and all, and your cash? Yeah, absolutely. But AB obviously wasn't going to get cut. So, and when you're dealing about a guy that's going to want to be the highest paid wide receiver in the league, and you had all that's going on with him, teams wanted to probably know pretty quick right at the start of the league year what they were dealing with, and especially ahead of the draft of what it was going to cost them as far as trade compensation goes. Other teams want all that business worked out. So if you were going to play hardball and keep AB after the start of the new league year, good luck trying to deal him for a third and a fifth after anything better than a third and a fifth after that, because just the priority wasn't going to be there. A lot of teams have their mind made up, and they're going to be wanting to move on at that point. So I just don't understand. Look, be mad about it. And I've said that right from the get-go. Go ahead and be upset that they only got a third and a fifth, but put a lot of that on AB. Put most of that on AB. Don't put that on Kevin Colbert.
Right. No, I don't think they would have not gotten better value had they waited. I wholeheartedly agree. I just wonder if they could have done something earlier, if there was a better offer at some point earlier in the conversations and that team backed out or the leverage changed. I don't know. We can go down that rabbit hole for days and not get anywhere. So we'll get off of that because I think we've talked about AB in that situation enough. But referring back to the Ben and the leadership stuff, because that's been, I guess, the more relevant question and topic, rightly or wrongly for the Steelers this offseason. You had Tomlin come out and defend Ben, and I saw yesterday on Twitter, Ryan Switzer, James Conner, then Juju, I think, kind of had a subtle clapback at AB's comment, all taken to Twitter and social media to defend Big Ben.
Yeah, and James Harrison, obviously on the two major morning talk shows, what do they call it, the undefeated, undisputed, and what was the other one that he was on? Oh, Colin Cowherd. Look, in so many words, Ben's a good leader. Now, obviously, James Harrison was already in that locker room before Ben arrived, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so he's obviously seen the maturation process of Ben, and obviously Debo has been Debo for a while on the other side of the locker room, on the other side of the ball as far as the unit goes. So maybe he really doesn't, He does have a good idea of Ben as a leader, but he also probably knows a different side of Ben too, and he probably hasn't seen the firsthand kind of leadership in some of the position rooms and all. He's only probably seen Ben in general team settings and pregame and postgame and halftime locker room. He probably hasn't seen Ben in the more kind of intimate, settings, so to speak. So I don't know how much of what how close to heart you should take what Harrison had to say about Ben. It's obviously to get some sort of comments out there from a former teammate, about him. But, we've seen kind of Hines Ward kind of clap back in the other direction as well, too, during the Super Bowl, saying, Ben shouldn't throw guys on the bus. You know, those kind of things there. And then obviously the current teammates, especially on the offensive side of the ball, coming out in support of Ben in the last 24 hours, probably not overly surprising. Here's the thing, and I think this goes back to what Mike Tomlin said. Can Ben be a better leader than what he's been to date? The answer to that, I think, is an easy yes. Should Ben be a little bit more careful with the way he handles himself on his radio shows? Absolutely. You know, Ben should be beyond the point in his career where he has to send a quote unquote message through the media. I mean, look, you just take the kids aside in the locker room and tell them how it is. You know, he did that with James Washington apparently last year, but after, you know, kind of saying what he did about him on the radio show. I think he just has to be a little bit more judicial about how he handles himself when talking to the media and talking about other players, because I can certainly see how it would rub some wrong, especially the veteran players. Maybe it's more okay or more copacetic to kind of call out the things that the very younger players on the offensive players on the roster don't do well. But, you know, when you get into kind of the more veteran players, I mean, when's the last time you heard him call out one of his offensive linemen for doing something wrong?
They haven't done a whole lot wrong, though.
Yeah, during his radio show. Yeah, but let's face it, there's some blocks that are missed, you know, and that kind of thing. You're not going to hear him call out Pouncey for almost getting him killed or something like that, you know. So I guess all in all, it looks good on a blog post and it looks good on the Twitter machine, but at the end of the day, I would like to see Ben try to work on a few things.
Sure, yeah. But Ben is not blameless, and I want to make that very clear. The truth really is in the middle. He's not this greatest teammate ever, ultimate guy, and he's not this toxic, divisive, terrible person that the other side has made him out to be. There's always somewhere in the middle where I think, and I wrote about this in the article I have this morning for Steelers Depot talking about Switzer and Connor, that I thought Ryan Clark really said it well when he said Ben wasn't a natural leader, something he's had to really work at, make mistakes, improve, get better at. He's a guy that came into a locker room where he wasn't the face. He wasn't the guy, which is unlike most franchise quarterbacks where you had a really good defense, you had a ton of veterans, and Ben was kind of playing a bit part and didn't have to lead this young group, this upstart team. And it took a while to really be put in that position. So I think that's something that you've had to work on and doesn't come natural to him. And I think some of the comments he said in the past have been dumb, have been unwarranted. The AB running the route flatter comment will never make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me, and stuff like that. But he's not this terrible person. I think you've seen the support from teammates past and present prove that, you know, he's at least trying and a generally a good dude that's liked by enough guys in that locker room.
All right, what else? Let's rattle through some of the other things Kevin Colbert had to say.
For Colbert or Tomlin? You want to go Colbert?
Let's go Colbert.
Okay, what else did Colbert have to say? Colbert just doing his typical stuff about the draft will always kind of be the foundation. That's boilerplate stuff for him. What else on Colbert?
He says we still have some flexibility to sign more players if it makes sense. That's kind of what you would expect at this point of the offseason as well, too. Look, for the most part, the bulk of the Steelers' free agency is over. It's over now. They have, in fact...
That's a reference to something I don't know.
Okay. It is, and you won't. All right. The Steelers right now, with all these contracts in, as we sit here in real time, and it's very rare that we kind of get a real-time snapshot for a period of days, of where the salary cap is for the team in real time. And right now they are $3,137,799. So a little over $3.1 million underneath the cap right now. Obviously, we talked about in the last show about that's roughly about a little less than that is with the displacement is what it's going to cost to sign the draft class. They obviously are going to need room for in-season moves, cap space as well too. All that will come about. They have Kevin Colbert has reiterated that They're going to try to trade Morgan Burnett, but assuming that doesn't happen, look, this is one of those instances. If he even gets a bag of footballs for Morgan Burnett and that $5 million salary this year, Kevin Colbert you need to stand up and give him a standing ovation here. They're going to try to trade Morgan Burnett, and if they're unable to, then they're going to release him. That's not a surprise there. You're going to free up at least a little over $3 million in cap space, maybe up to as much as $5 million if you end up making them a post June 1st cap hit. Which, by the way, I mean, is there really that much of a savings, in between the two to have to eat up the cap space until June 1st? Probably not. But regardless, Morgan Burnett, it's only a matter of time before he's out the door, and you save a little cap space there. Look, at this point, with first-year cap hits on some of these lower salary players that you would think the Steelers have interest in, you can easily, you can easily fit 3 or 4 more guys under the cap after displacement costs, because the first-year cap hits on any type of the player that the Steelers go after right now are not going to be. We're talking probably less than $1 million on these guys, and then when you figure in roster displacement, so yeah, you could go out. I mean, you could re-sign a guy like Cody Sensabaugh for a minimum salary benefit deal. Those kind of deals are what's going to be in play. Are the Steelers going to go after another tight end? I think Tomlin, in so many words, said that could be either free agency or the draft or both. That could be something we could see the Steelers do here in the coming weeks. So I guess the main takeaway is that, barring something really unforeseen at this point, the bulk of the Steelers' free agency signings are now over. So the 3 main guys, talk about Steven Nelson, Dante Moncrief, and Mark Barron. That's going to be your main haul for the 2019 offseason for the Steelers.
Yep, and they spent a pretty penny. What was it? I think $46 million in total contracts on him, which is certainly much more than we've ever seen this team do before, but I thought it was the right move to be aggressive, to get some holes in the roster kind of filled and to give yourself that flexibility in the draft. For Tomlin, just kind of ran through a bunch of the coaches. It's confirmed that Keith Butler will coach the outside linebackers this year, which was previously reported, but now it's confirmed, so not a surprise there. Sean Surratt saying how it was a no-brainer to make him the offensive line coach after Mike Munchak went to Denver. Again, really nothing shocking there. And then I guess the one thing I know was with Terrell Austin. He's going to work in the secondary, but also in some form or fashion. Tomlin didn't fully commit or didn't fully explain, but said he might, work in replay assistant and maybe challenges, maybe some sort of kind of assistant head coach-ish responsibilities because of his background. So the fans that have been wanting somebody to help with Tomlin with some of the replays and challenges, you might have gotten your wish.
Yeah, and quote unquote, essentially he's a secondary coach, but I'm acknowledging that he brings some unique talents to the table as a secondary coach, Tomlin told Missy Matthews in an exclusive interview yesterday. He has experience as a coordinator. He's also a guy that's been on the doorstep of some head coaching positions in recent years. He brings that know-how and that preparation, anticipating using him in terms of some situational things, be it replay and judgment in games to help us in a lot of ways, because that's something that he's been preparing for in his aspirations to be a head coach. So he has a lot of additional talents that could be beneficial to us beyond his secondary expertise, and I think that's reflected in his title.
Yeah, and so there you go. We'll have to see exactly how that works. I mean, I'm curious about how the secondary is going to work with Austin and Tom Bradley. Are they going to split position groups? That seemed to be the indication earlier, but I'm not quite sure. At training camp, I'll certainly be watching to see how that group gets divvied up.
All right, what else did Tomlin talked a little bit about Artie Burns, and the way that the question was phrased to him is kind of disappointing what was used, and Tomlin quickly said just said there was no kind of disappointing about it. He's disappointed in him, and that that's straight and to the point as you're going to get from Mike Tomlin. And it's very rare you kind of have Tomlin come out and be as direct in a negative fashion about a player. Mm-hmm. So he goes not a little bit disappointed, disappointed, certainly. Thomas said, and he says, having the ability to carry those talents into a stadium kind of defines us, or inability to do so. So certainly, definitely a shot at Artie Burns there. Now, when you go back to Burns' extremely poor play last season, when combined with his inconsistent play from his first 2 seasons, the Steelers were essentially forced to address the cornerback position this offseason with going out and getting Steven Nelson to assumingly play opposite Joe Hayden, this coming season. And it goes without saying, Burns' immediate future with the Steelers, they're not going to pick up his 5th-year option this year unless somebody pushes the wrong button. they better not. Not only that, but Burns is probably going to enter training camp, needing to prove that he can make the 53-man roster. I don't think there's a guarantee. I wouldn't bet my house on that happening right now. And that assumes, of course, that Artie Burns even makes it to training camp, because he's due, which is kind of weird that it was set up in his contract this way. It's almost like, what kind of foresight did you have with this? He's due an $800,000 roster bonus on the 3rd day of training camp this year. So are you going to make that $800,000 investment in him by the 3rd day of training camp? Are you going to find out enough about Artie Burns between now and the start of training camp to make a decision of whether or not you want to invest another $800,000 in him, knowing that he might not ultimately make the roster? If you do pay that, are we to assume that there's a good chance of him making the 53-man roster? I mean, we don't have a long history of the Steelers of giving up on first-round draft picks before their rookie contract's over. So, I mean, he is, when he's not holding people, he is decent on special teams, at this point here. So, here's the other thing, and I think it caught some people by surprise. In his first 3 seasons in the NFL, Burns, who will turn 24 on May 4th, has registered 141 total tackles, 27 defense passes, 4 interceptions. However, he has been flagged a total of 33 times during regular season games since being drafted, with 11 of those, really a third of those, being specifically for defensive pass interference calls. And you and I were giggling kind of right before the start we got on the podcast here, that we're talking about an Artie Burns that really didn't start getting a lot of playing time until midway through his rookie season. He obviously didn't play hardly any on the defensive side of football the second half of last season. So basically in 2 seasons' time, he's logged 33 penalties against him.
That's tough to do, but he's done it somehow, apparently. Yeah, Dave, I know
that's a penalty a game.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the technique has been so poor. He's lost confidence and trust in what he's seeing. It's a mess. I know me wading into cap stuff and any of those questions is dangerous, a dangerous approach and tactic. But the Steelers reportedly asked AB to move his roster bonus back. They moved Chris Boswell's roster bonus back. Could they move Burns's $800K bonus back to like September 1st? I mean, if you're the Steelers, I think I'm asking Burns to do that, or telling him, do that or we're cutting you, because I'm not paying $800K for a guy who's going to be on the outside looking in, heading into this thing.
You could always ask, right? I mean, but put yourself in a position of Artie Burns. At that point, would you just tell the Steelers, release me so at least I can get an early start on another training camp here and possibly make another roster? Does $800,000 mean that much to you? Of moving it back to make one team, whereas you could possibly have the pickings of going to another one. So yeah, they can ask. I'm not so sure if I'm Artie Burns at this point. If I think I make them make the decision on me, I guess, is where I'm coming from. So
sure. I mean, Burns could say no, but if I'm Pittsburgh, I'm saying we're going to release you if you don't do this. And if you're Burns, do you want to try to go to a new team in August? I mean, no offense to Burns, but he struggled picking up this system that he's been in for 4 or 5 years now. You think he's going to pick up a new system in Oakland or Baltimore or wherever on the fly? You think that's going to work? I don't like his chances. So,
well, I mean, I think the writing the writing would be already on the wall for him, them coming to him, asking him to
he knows the position he's in. It's not a shock to him that his play hasn't lived up to his billing. I mean, the same way that it was for Boswell.
I think I make them. I think I make them make the decision on me. I tell them no. If you want me here to compete, I'll compete. But if not, turn me loose.
Well, if I'm Burns, my best chance of revitalizing my career is in Pittsburgh, and hoping that maybe Terrell Austin, working with him, I feel like Austin's going to work more closely with the corners and Bradley more with the safeties. Maybe that'll help. I think trying to go somewhere new in August, pick up a new playbook on the fly and all that, I don't think it's going to work. So I think you got to make it work in Pittsburgh, and I would accept that, but that's just me.
All right, let's see. What else do we have here? We talk about Tomlin also said open competition for the Steelers starting right tackle job. That's not a huge shock that he would say that. I mean, you got guys in Matt Filer, Chukwuma Okorafor. Ooh, I said it. Almost a year after he's drafted, I can say his name. And obviously Gerald Hawkins, former fourth-round draft pick out of LSU. At this point, some listeners are probably saying, who? Gerald Hawkins obviously had his rookie season wiped out by a shoulder injury. People forget that he did play some in 2017. He logged almost 50 snaps on offense, but all but one of those, if memory serves me, were him playing that extra blocking tight end into the line of scrimmage guy, if you will. I think he only logged one snap at left tackle that season. I think that was because Alejandro Villanueva got his bell rung on the play and had to leave the field for one play or something, and Hawkins had to come in and play left tackle for that play there. So obviously Hawkins going to hopefully be in the mix. Okorafor and obviously Matt Filer. Now Mike Tomlin did not mention Zach Banner by name. That's not overly surprising, although Zach Banner did stick on the roster, on the 53-man roster for all 16 games last season. He dressed for only one of those games, and he did not see an offensive snap, so he's probably on the outside looking in. True or false, Matt Filer will open up 8 OTAs as the starting right tackle when the summer gets going.
True, but I like Okorafor's chances to start week 1.
I would agree with you. I think because Matt Filer, because of the experience, Matt Filer wasn't awful last year, right?
No, he played well. He played really well.
But I think you're thinking that Okorafor has a higher ceiling, perhaps can be an overall better player. That's why you spent a third-round draft pick on him. So I think you go into this with the you take your hat off and you hand it to Matt Filer. He gets the early first-team reps, and then you make Okorafor earn this thing. And as far as Hawkins goes, really going to have a lot to prove. And I think more than anything at this point with Hawkins, you definitely want to see him be able to play, to hopefully maybe be able to be more of a swing guy. Because, look, we know Filer can be a swing guy, right? I mean, we've seen Filer play some guard. Mm-hmm. And, in fact, I still insist that Filer might be a better guard than he is a tackle. We just don't know. We haven't seen enough of it yet. And maybe Hawkins can show you some position flexibility along the way and stay healthy on top of it. But I think Hawkins right now has really got his work cut out for him.
He does. He's not on scholarship anymore. He's arguably outside looking in. I wrote about this over the weekend, Dave, is that if you're Gerald Hawkins, yes, you want to compete for the right tackle spot, and Tomlin mentioned, and then I don't want to pretend like there's no chance or discount it entirely, but let's be realistic. It's likely going to be Okorafor or Filer. And if you're Hawkins, you should be rooting really hard for Chukwuma Okorafor to be that starting right tackle, because if he isn't, or let's say that Okorafor is, now Hawkins has the value of being right tackle and left tackle versatile. Filer really can't play left tackle. They don't put him there, so you might have the extra value there. And Hawkins could have that value, as you mentioned, of being that extra tight end tackle eligible kind of guy. And Filer really can't do that either. So if Okorafor's the backup, he can do both those things. And that makes Hawkins redundant and not someone that's going to bring a lot of value to you. But if Okorafor is the guy, then Hawkins starts having some value to you on a roster.
How much value is Filer's ability to play some guard along with, I hate to use it, not awful as a trait at tackle, but I mean he really wasn't awful. I mean now
he's not awful. No one's saying he's awful. Yeah.
Now we have to go back to remember how quick Ben was getting the football out, blah blah blah, and all like that. But I mean, if you didn't know any better, you wouldn't have known that Filer probably wasn't a starter right from the get go last year. You know, but how much does Filer's ability to play inside help his cause?
It helps it tremendously. Any lineman that has versatility in the Steelers, system, it becomes a lot more valuable player. I mean, you have to have versatility. What guy on this team that's a backup or at least a borderline guy plays just one spot? Nobody. They move all around. So it helps a lot, and that's what helped Filer be attractive in the first place, get on the roster, make the roster, get some work in when injuries happen, and then week 17 games. So yeah, it's huge. But he can't play left tackle. And if you're Hawkins, you can say, I can play left tackle, coach. So make Okorafor the starter and give me that extra boost.
Didn't Filer dabble with a little bit of center or no?
Yes, but it was like a baby deer. It was not fun. I saw that in a training camp practice. I mean, he could do it in a break class in case of emergency, but that's like Chris Hubbard playing.
Right,
center.
But I mean, the more you can do, right?
Yeah. Oh, the more that you can do, and you got to be versatile. That's where we've seen guys like Hubbard make their calling card, coming in as a swing guy. Foster began his career as a guy that could play a lot of spots, guard, tackle, and he's played right tackle before. So that's how guys work their way up the ladder. And for Hawkins, that's how he's gonna get that spot back, by showing that versatility, by being able to play both tackle spots, playing tight end eligible, having those things that make him attractive.
Well, I mean, when you look at the draft and you look at the depth of this offensive line, you hate to go back to saying there's no way this team is going to draft an offensive lineman, but I think we'd be surprised in the early rounds if it happened. But I mean, is a center guard guy out of the question in round 6 or something?
No, I think the odds are pretty decent. They do take somebody just because the principle of add talent, make that group as strong as possible. Injuries, you never know what's going to happen. So, yeah, I mean, let's assume they even just have 9 selections. I think there's an offensive lineman somewhere in those 9.
There will not be a tackle, though, drafted, right? We got a little bit surprised last year with Okorafor, right? Yeah. I mean,
but hey, to their credit, that move turned out really well for them. That was a smart decision.
Well, and then that goes back to what Kevin Colbert says, right? I mean, you draft, you don't lock in positionally because you draft good players because you might feel sorry if you bypass them.
Yeah, draft a year early as opposed to a year late.
Right. So I mean, we'll see when it comes to that. All right. What else did Mike Tomlin went on the whole second-year players supposed to make the jump thing again? Of course, James Washington was in his sights when it come to that. What specifically, if anything, stuck out about what he had to say about James Washington?
Nothing too crazy. Nothing certainly that's going to surprise you, but just saying that they expect a big jump. The bar is going to be raised pretty high, knowing that, how important it is for everybody to step up and help replace Antonio Brown. Not that one guy is going to do it, but certainly Washington is going to be a big X factor. You have to get him to develop. You have to get him to play like the second-round pick they envisioned. And Tomlin went back to saying, we saw the things in training camp in the preseason last year. We saw him make tough catches. We saw him win routinely. And generally speaking, when you see those things in practice, you're going to eventually see him on game day. And that happened with James Conner. That happened with TJ Watt. And so those are the examples that Tomlin made. Not that it guarantees anything. It doesn't. But those are the examples that Tomlin pointed to, saying why we believe James Washington can make that second-year jump.
Anything else stuck out to you? I mean, Kevin Colbert said, all right, the Ben extension, that's still ongoing. Nothing of a surprise there. Like I've said now that we've gotten past the roster bonus due date, what's the rush other than trying to beat Russell Wilson and Phillip Rivers to the altar, I guess, That would be the only thing. I mean, how surprised will you be if at this point if a contract extension with Roethlisberger isn't done before the start of the regular season?
I'd be very surprised. I think it will get done. It just took longer than we thought.
I agree as well, too. So now you've got a little bit of time to work with when it comes there. Colbert also says he's kind of tuning out all the offseason criticism of Roethlisberger. I'll tell you this. It's going to be must-see TV the first time that Ben does next meet the media, which I would guess would be the first or second day of OTAs, right? I mean, do we expect Ben to come out and talk to the media before then?
The only time I could hear Ben or envision Ben talk is after the draft, like he did last year. But, you're not going to hear from Ben anytime soon. I'm not sure what he'll say. He might just deflect and try to be as diplomatic as possible, which is probably the smart move. Real quick, Dave, a little bit of breaking news. Not that it's super important for Steelers fans, but interesting. Landry Jones has a new home. Yay, Landry Jones. He's going to Oakland. He's going to play with AB again.
I wonder how AB feels about that.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, Landry Jones back on a team, so good for him.
Definitely interesting. Okay.
And he might be if they keep 3, he might be the number 3 because that room's Derek Carr, Glennon, and Nathan Peterman. So you got a chance, Landry Jones.
Yeah, you definitely think he's got a chance there. Be interesting to see how that plays out.
All right, Dave, anything else? I think that was most of the Tomlin Colbert report extravaganza.
You threw me off track there. I wasn't expecting that breaking news there.
Just rocked your world.
I know I was going to get to next. Rob Gronkowski. I don't think it was probably a huge shock. I know there's been some talk that maybe he would hang it up this offseason. He's finally walking away from the game after 9 seasons, I think, where he was really the league's premier dominant tight end. Steeler fans and members of the Steelers secondary probably not shedding any tears to see Rob Gronkowski walk away from the game, assuming he's done for good at this point. I guess the question becomes now, I mean, because of the brief kind of career overall that he's had, was he good enough? Was he the best at the greatest at his position during the time that he played? Is he going to be a first ballot Hall of Fame guy? I think that's quickly where he's going to get in at some point, I would think. But the question is he a first ballot guy?
To me, he is, absolutely. Now, you could debate if is he the best tight end ever. That's a more open question. But, I mean, who was more dominant at their position for several years at the tight end position? Who was more dominant than Rob Gronkowski? Nobody. I mean, it was absurd. So, again, for my criteria is that you have to be the best at what you do or near the best at what you do for at least a couple years, more than just a one-year wonder. And Gronk certainly was that for 5, 6, 7 years, whatever the number is. And so, yeah, first ballot. No doubt in my mind.
Sort of the Terrell Davis route, right?
That's a great point. Yep, good call.
Didn't play for long, but when he played, was on top of his game. And look, everybody will talk about Rob Gronkowski, the receiver, and the average yards per target and the average yards per reception, and obviously the touchdowns. He was one hell of a blocker as well.
Yep, I mean he was a do-it-all kind of guy, and they don't make him like that too often.
And I mean, he killed the Steelers. What did he have? 8 touchdowns during his career, and 41 receptions, something along those lines. And I think didn't he miss a game or two, or especially I don't think he played in every playoff game or in the playoff game between the two teams because of injury or whatnot either. But this is a guy he had 2 games. And I think 3 overall during his career, if I'm not mistaken, that he had 3 touchdowns in, and 2 of those came against the Steelers. And one of them, the first one came way back in, 2010? Was it against poor William Gay? 3-touchdown game, and then obviously you rewind to a couple of years ago. What was it? I think 2016, something like that.
Yeah, Butler's first game ever was it 15? But yeah, Butler's first game as defensive coordinator, the Week 1 game.
Right, 3 touchdowns as well too. I mean, this guy absolutely. You even go back to a couple years ago in that game where in the fourth quarter, he didn't get much love until the fourth quarter, and then when Brady hit him on like 3 consecutive passes of damn near explosive plays, if not explosive plays, and then although he didn't have a touchdown in that game, he had that 2-point conversion where he just clowned on Sean Davis there. So I don't know. You can make an argument of why he probably isn't a first ballot guy, but boy, if he's not in by second or third ballot, that'll be a surprise. All the championships that he has, and once again, just a dominant player. I'm glad I was alive to watch his career, because I think if you take your fan allegiance out of it, you can't help but be impressed with what he did on the football field.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you had that Butler game we just mentioned, though. The first touchdown, Gronk wasn't covered, and then the next few times they put poor Terrence Garvin on him for some red zone fades and just got absolutely bodied. So, yeah, Steelers never really found a good way to slow down Gronk, but hey, neither did the rest of the league. Do you think there's any chance Gronk comes back late in the season? I know Rosenhaus even kind of teased it and said, he might come back late in the year if things turn out the right way.
Nothing surprises me. I think I think it'd have to be the right situation, and obviously with the Patriots, I think. But,
well, sure. I assume the situation will be right. I assume the Patriots will be in a playoff run situation, as they always are.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past him. I wouldn't bet against it happening. But I mean, obviously the odds. Look, at his age now, I mean, he's done it all. I mean, what else does he have left to prove other than maybe get another championship?
Mm-hmm.
So, if it got in week 10 or week 11 and the Patriots lost whatever tight end they had or what have you, and he thought maybe if he stayed in, he's a workout warrior anyway, so he's going to probably stay in shape and do all the things that he would normally do during a football season anyway, and if his body feels good, I could see it, so I wouldn't put it past him.
My strong guess is no. I think he'll have too much fun doing whatever he's gonna do, which I'm sure will be very fun, given his kind of carefree attitude, and I'm sure he can do whatever he wants to do. And I think the injuries have been more of a factor than even it's been led on. I mean, he had back problems coming out of Arizona, and I feel like you don't want to mess with that stuff and wreck yourself 20 years from now. So I mean, it's possible, but I really doubt he returns.
I mean, he's made his money and he got out, relatively healthy, I guess.
He says he never spent a dime of his actual contracts. All the money he's ever spent was all on the endorsements and stuff. So hats off to him for being really smart with his finances, because that kills so many guys, and so many guys go broke. But it doesn't sound like he's going to be one of those guys.
That guy looks like he never has a bad day either, does he?
Yeah.
He never looks like he has a bad day. Haloti Ngata also announced his retirement. That guy was a thorn in the Steelers' side for more than 1 or 2 games.
And Ben's nose.
Yeah, and Ben's nose as well too. All right, some of the rules the rule changes that are being voted on. It looks like it's made it at least to the owners' vote here. What do you? I think the one that sticks out the most, and I gotta admit I haven't gone through these with a fine-tooth comb. There's so much other stuff to write about and all. But what do you think about this 4th and 15? Rule proposal there that, would overtake kind of an onside kick situation.
I'm cool with it, and I'm usually the stickler for change, but I like it. Onside kicks are just so low percentage, and, give me a more exciting play and a play that has a better chance of working. So I'm cool with it.
I think it would be interesting. Is there some sort of rule where a certain part of the game where you would have to do this, or can you do this at any time? I guess my run through of the rules is it doesn't sound like it's limited to like within the final 2 minutes of each half or something.
Yeah, I think the AAF has that rule in place, but I haven't heard it for the NFL, but I haven't seen the exact language. So either way they want to do it is fine with me.
I mean, what would you view as you having a better shot at doing? Recovering an onside kick or converting a 4th and 15?
I mean, and you can do the math on it. I can try to look up what the conversion rate is for 4th and 15, but I have to imagine the 4th and 15 is higher. The onside kick percentage is like 5%. I mean, how many onside kicks were even recovered last year? So I'll research the 4th and 15 here for you real quick.
I'm a purist. So I don't take these rule changes well. And I think someone pointed out on Twitter in one of the feeds or something, a response I read somewhere, and it said, "Why can't the NFL just let teams lose?"
Yeah.
Why is there? It just seems like they want to give them. Well, okay, well, here's your one last final chance. I guess I could see in a situation where if you're down, I don't know. I understand why they want to do it. And, of course, there's the whole safety aspect involved. And, heck, maybe 5 years from now we won't even have kickoffs or punts or anything along those lines anymore. Maybe this is the new NFL, and 10 years from now I'll be outside shaking my fist at the cloud, with all these changes and all. I guess I understand it. I don't like it, but 4th and 15 is kind of a unique situation. I mean, you're going to have one heck of a play dialed up or one heck of a defensive breakdown to happen, in order to convert these. But even then, you convert. Where do you get the ball? Do you get the ball? Do you get the ball where you convert at? I guess you do.
Yeah, you might, or you might start at like your 40. Maybe that's just how it goes. Last year, according to Pro Football Reference, teams were 5 of 18 on 4th and 15 plus. So that's 27%, which has to be much, much higher than onside kick rates.
So I wonder how most of our listeners feel about this. I assume a lot of them, being younger, probably don't have as much of an issue, or not as many are as purist as I am here. All right, what else? Any other aspects from rules or whatnot that they're voting on? I mean, we'll have the recap of all that as soon as they finally do vote and get whatever passed is passed.
Yeah, nothing's been passed yet. A replay, it doesn't sound like they're going to make any big changes, but again, we'll see. Nope, I think that was everything for me. So if you want to get to some reader emails to close out the show, then let's do that.
All right, let's get to that. From Kevin, draft question. Hey, Dave and Alex, I've narrowed down the potential first-round picks for the Steelers to 5 prospects. Bush, Hawkinson, Butler out of Iowa State, Murphy out of Washington, or Burns, the edge rusher. Do you agree with this list? If you had one player if you had to add one player to this list, who would it be, and who on this list would be least likely to be chosen by the Steelers? I would think, looking at that list right now, maybe Burns. Just from a maybe a scheme aspect of it. But those 5 names, Bush, Hawkinson, look, I mean, if they didn't show up at that Iowa Pro Day and he's not brought in for a pre-draft visit, going to be kind of hard to go at Hawkinson there. Butler, what do you think about Butler's age? He's going to be like 43 in May. No, he's going to be 23 in May.
Yeah,
or early May.
It's a little bit older. Again, a lot of names on that list either pro days haven't happened yet, or they haven't been to those pro days, so that kind of is in my head. I like Butler though. I mean, I think Butler makes sense at 20. Not being at that pro day though, that gives me a lot of pause. Again, we'll have to see if they bring him in for a pre-draft visit. Another name to try to throw in there, I'm not sure. Yeah, with Burns, it sounds like Burns is going to be a top 10, top 15 guy. I think he is a good scheme fit. I'm not as crazy about him as some other guys are, but I do think he fits the scheme pretty well. I don't know another name. I'm if it's not Devin Bush, I kind of have been struggling who I want to go with. I've kind of been leaning back towards Byron Murphy, but I don't know where I stand yet.
All right, Wolverine's choice from Darren Boyer. Hi, Dave and Alex. In a dream scenario, if both Rashawn Gary and Devin Bush are available at 20, who are you going with? Darren, pronounced Hines Ward for Hall of Famer. For Darren, I don't get the. I don't get the phonetic there, Darren. You lost me there. All right, but what's a dream scenario? Both Rashawn Gary and Devin Bush are available at 20. Who are you going with?
Give me Devin Bush. I guess both have production concerns, but Bush is the bigger need, so Bush definitely.
All right, from Barbati. If the Steelers draft a corner in round 1, should we just assume he sucks regardless of what's on tape? That's a little bit over the top there. Chuck Griffith. Look, I mean, the Steelers haven't done a great job in developing corners. I don't think that's any secret whatsoever. Chuck Griffith writes in, Dave, do you expect a large Steelers presence at the University of Florida Pro Day to see Chauncey Gardner-Johnson? I will be shocked. I mean, look, say what you will about Ja'Kai Polite and what all has happened to him during this pre-draft process, but Florida's got enough athletes over there, and when you throw in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, yeah, I will, and I think that's coming up. Is that this week or next week, the Florida Pro Day, Alex?
Looking it up now. Tomorrow, March 27th.
Yeah, I'll be surprised. What other Pro Day is going
on? Tomorrow?
Yeah, along with the Florida Pro Day.
Nothing too big. Mississippi State, NC State, Maryland,
Mississippi State could be a draw, right?
Yeah, you got Montez Sweat sitting there. Arizona State, UConn. Yeah, they should be at Florida. And also there's Voshon Joseph, too. Don't forget about Voshon Joseph as a potential name to watch as well.
Right. Yeah, I'll be surprised. I don't think they missed a Florida Pro Day in a few years now. You know?
Yeah, they usually they like the warm weather.
All right, Will Fernandez writes in, hello, Dave and Alex, long-time listener, first-time emailer. While Mike Tomlin and Kevin Colbert are out at the owners' meetings doing interviews, Ben has remained quiet throughout the whole AB and Bell saga. Hallelujah. I say to that, Will. Could this be a sign of a new and improved Ben, meaning he will lead team with quiet leadership, or will he sing like a bird on the radio once the season starts? Look, when has Ben ever put himself in a position where he talks this time of the offseason? So just because he's not talking now, to me, that doesn't mean anything, because he normally doesn't say anything this time of year.
Right, and I'm sure Ben has seen and heard some of this stuff because it's been so prevalent on TV. But remember, Ben doesn't have social media. He doesn't do Facebook. He doesn't do Twitter. So he's not, refreshing Twitter to see what AB's saying. He's off. He's got a family. He's got kids. He's got off season. He's probably paid very little attention to everything that's going on.
I bet he knows every last damn thing.
Oh, no.
I bet. Now, he might not be on the social media and all, but I bet he watches Sports Center and some of this other stuff every night. He knows what's being said about him.
No, yeah, he's aware of it. Like I said, it's been on TV, and, it's unavoidable, really, but he's not looking at it every single day. And I do think whenever he does talk, I think he'll kind of be the dad version, a little disappointed, but he won't. I think he'll be pretty diplomatic because he doesn't want to create more waves and make this. He'll keep bouncing the story in the end.
There will be a passive aggressive Ben will show up.
That's Dad Ben. Yeah, Dad Ben, a little passive aggressive.
That will show up, and I think I don't think the next time. I think the next time we hear from him will be whatever the first or second practice of OTAs. To me, I hope he stays quiet until then. To be honest with you, I don't think there's any reason for him. As much as we would like to hear him maybe address some of these things, deep down inside, I don't need to write about it that bad. I can wait until the first or second day of OTA practices.
Me too.
Let's see. Joe writes in. Joe didn't get DeSunes. Writes in. Hey, Dave and I was a big fan of the show and work. Obviously, we know the Steelers have a history with finding talented wide receivers in the draft. My question is, do you think this is more attributable to good scouting, good coaching, luck, or a little bit of all three? Yes.
Yeah. Sorry to disagree.
Huh?
I agree with you.
I mean, I think it's good scouting, good coaching, luck, and a little bit of all of it. I mean, I really think it is. I mean, if there is one thing this team seemingly does well, now obviously the jury's still out on James Washington right now, and you could go back and look at guys like Lima Swede. I mean, it hasn't all been roses. I mean, I think we forget some of these guys. Marcus Wheaton. I mean,
Willie Reed, 3rd round pick.
Who?
Willie Reed.
Willie Reed. I mean, there've been the misses in the early rounds when it comes to wide receivers. So I mean, it hadn't all come up roses for them. But I mean, overall, they've seen pretty good with these guys in the early rounds. Zachary Figueroa writes in, "Hey, Dave and Alex, which year 3 player in your opinion will have the best year next year? Juju, Watt, or James Conner? Also, can you explain how compensatory draft picks work, and will we get any in 2020? Have there been any notable Steelers in the past drafted from a compensatory pick? Thanks for the hard work, guys. Listen to each episode twice because they are packed full of detail. Well, I'm hard enough to listen to once. I can imagine trying to listen to me twice. Some people say they do me on quarter speed or whatnot, that I'm easier to swallow. And the phonetic spelling of Zach is Zach. Evidently. All right, which year 3 player, in your opinion, will have the best year next year, Alex? Juju, Watt, or Connor?
No bad answers there. I guess I go Juju just because he's had the best of the first 2, and I think he's going to continue to ascend, and he's going to get even more targets and all that. But they're all going to play well.
Yeah, that's I don't know, man. We're talking statistical. James Conner could be a guy that rushes for 1,200 yards and another, 600 and possible 500 in receiving. So, is him getting fit? Is James Conner getting 1,500 total yards from scrimmage more impressive than, say, Juju getting 1,300 receiving yards? Which is more impressive?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe Connor, because it just means he stayed healthy and been that every down guy. But they're both impressive.
I think I think if all 3 of those guys put themselves in a discussion where we have to decide next year, that's a good problem to have.
Mm-hmm.
Very good problem to have. Also, how compensatory draft picks work. Look, nobody really knows the formula, but obviously the kid on Pro Football Focus really has a good grasp on it. It goes along with playing time and contracts and contract value and those sort of things of where those guys go in free agency. Obviously, you have to be an unrestricted free agent and a team lose you to go in a loss column. But you have to remember that when you sign an unrestricted free agent to an above minimum contract, that goes in the in kind of the debit column, if you will. So it's kind of all of a balance sheet, if you will, and obviously contract value plays a huge importance in that. So trying to explain it past that, I know there's an old article on NFL.com where you can read up on a little bit on the formula and how values are assigned, but nobody really knows. I think outside of Nick Corte's probably been the best at this for years now at predicting this kind of things. And as far as 2020 goes, and assuming the rest of the Steelers free agency this year goes as the way we think it will go, I think you can pencil in the Steelers as having a 3rd round compensatory draft pick for 2020, and all that goes back to the Le'Veon Bell thing. I think everything else is going to cancel out there. And as far as notable Steelers compensatory draft picks, there's probably been a few of them.
Players that they've drafted with a compensatory pick?
Yeah, and
wasn't James Conner a compensatory pick player?
Yeah, it might have been. There's been a few of them, I think, compensatory picks there for the Steelers. So I don't have that off the top. Maybe by the time the next podcast rolls around, I'll have a better answer for you there. And Zach, thanks as always, thanks for listening to the show there. Rodney Schumann writes in, longtime listener, frequent tweeter to Yins. Worst case scenario at 20, couldn't trade up for either Devin. Would you go tight end, wide receiver, outside linebacker, or cornerback? I'd lean wide receiver and draft Hakeem Butler. Am I cra-cra, as in kids like to say? In other words, is he crazy? Oh, wow, look, if you couldn't trade up for either Devin, would you go tight end, wide receiver? I guess it depends on the wide receiver that's there. I'm just not thinking that edge is going to be as attractive at that spot there when the Steelers pick. So, maybe if a guy like Byron Murphy's on there, maybe that's the way you go.
Yeah, and I don't think you're crazy for going Butler. I think that there's a really good case to be made there. I do want to see, again, realistically, if they bring him in for a visit. But yeah, I've been thinking about the same question you have. If it's not the inside linebacker, then who is it? And I don't have a great answer. And I do think Byron Murphy could be a candidate. A guy that you would kick inside to play the nickel.
Jason Lockery from Baltimore. Jason's stuck in Baltimore land. Sup, fellas? Have you guys got a chance to take a deep dive into tight ends available in the draft this year? If so, any guys you'd like to see the Steelers grab and when? He says about the tight ends in this year's draft, any that you'd like to see the Steelers grab and win. Look, the Foster Moreau out of LSU, I think, is a guy that the Steelers have serious interest in later in the draft, maybe round 4, round 5, something along those lines. I think you could see him draft a tight end in the first 3 rounds if one's there. What's your overall view of the tight end class?
Yeah, I think it's really good. I think it's deep. It's got a lot of talent at the top. You have Dawson Knox from Ole Miss. You got Dax Raymond, Utah State. Josh Oliver, San Jose State. Jay Sternberger from A&M, who we just mentioned earlier in the show. There's a lot of good names there. So I think if you want to find a tight end, you'll be able to find one. And I think Moreau could be that round 3 kind of guy.
Right, that early, round 3, maybe.
Yeah,
huh?
With the way he worked out and the way that he tested, I think he's going to be that round 3 guy.
I have him maybe round 4 as earliest right now with him. But look, true or false? They're going to draft a tight end in the first 5 rounds.
True.
I'm with you. I'm going to go true there as well too. I don't see them not doing that, regardless of what happens the rest of free agency here. Let's see. From Richard Hudspeth, was Hines the X in the Steelers offense back then? I ask because Juju resembles his play and want to know why people write him off as not being able to work the X. Looking ahead to Steelers' upcoming season opponents, do you have any thoughts based around it? Look, it's way too early to get into. I mean, we've known who the opponents are going to be. I think the scary part is you got to go out west again. You got to play the Patriots this year, and the Browns are going to be better. That's my initial thought of the Steelers' upcoming opponents. Answer the X in Hines Ward.
I don't think he was. I'd have to go back and look.
More the Y, wasn't he?
Well, I get sort of the Y, the tight end, but he played like a tight end half the time. He was that Z, slot, just whatever you needed him to be. Juju, I thought that Juju couldn't play it. One, he just hasn't played it. I mean, they even did that last year, and that, he's still learning to play on the outside. He's playing as the Z receiver. You're getting a little more of a free release. You're not playing against press coverage as much, and there's a big difference between the Z and the X. It's not just flipping sides or where you line up. It's the type of coverage you're going to see, the type of routes that you're going to run, and the brackets you're going to see, and all things like that. So that's not really Juju's forte. You want him in the slot. You want him to play the Z.
All right, from Taylor Carpenter writes in, David Alex, I finally got through all David Long impact plays you put up on the site, and now a believer. I think this is a classic example of a player that the national media is just late to recognize the value of, and hence will be climbing, quote-unquote, climbing up the draft boards the closer we get to the draft. I have watched a ton of Devin Bush tape and see a very similar player in David Long, except Long, in his opinion, appeared to be in the offensive backfield, being disrupted more often than Bush. That's all. That's what I was trying to say in that list of 50 whatever plays. Or how much of Long's success do you think is attributed to the defense that West Virginia runs? That's a good question. I can't really answer for you there, Taylor. I had to go look a little bit more at schematics in there. But I'll tell you this. David Long could get into that backfield, both either from trying to be from the defense, either playing some one gap or two gap situations. That did stick out to me. He says at this point, I really hope we do not move up to get Bush in the first and instead stay put and try to take the best player available. His opinion, Long is top half of the second round player. Yeah, I don't know if I'd go that high on him, Taylor, but I mean, I think I would hope more than anything, and that's what these contextualizations and all are supposed to do. My idea of these contextualizations is to show people what good these players can do. I'm not trying to say that David Long belongs in the first or second round. I'm just trying to say I think this is a player that people aren't giving enough respect to, as to being a player that the Steelers could potentially have some serious interest in. And I think Alex, after watching them this week, has kind of agrees with that. Taylor also writes in, which would you rather the Steelers do? Stay put in the first round and select Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and trade up in the second round and get Long while giving up our fourth, or trade up a few spots in the first and get Bush? It costs the Steelers their early third round pick. Also, any word on Dave T? Dave, we're going to have Dave T on. People, don't worry about Dave T. We'll have Dave T on closer to the draft. We do all every year. We have not had Dave T on since, I don't know, first time he came on there. So he's going to be on. Any you want to answer that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson trade-up question?
Yeah, I don't think there's a bad answer there, but I think I would rather have Devin Bush with the trade-up than sitting there to take Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
I'm a big Chauncey fan. I don't know if he's first round slam dunk guy, but sure wouldn't hurt my feelings to have him on this roster here. Let's see, draft versus trade options from Mark. Writes in, with the draft capital costs associated with moving up, is a Darren Lee trade option possible even with the Barron pickup? With the news that the Jets plan to shop him, what are your thoughts on Lee to the Steelers to guarantee long-term option with the likelihood that Devins will be gone? Bird in hand scenario. Also, how do you determine if trading up for, say, Bush outweighs the loss of a pick at number 66, i.e. is Bush that much better than, say, David Long to pay moving up versus keeping the picks, taking best available at 20, getting Long and Winovich at 66 and 84. Look, Darren Lee, let me put this out there about Darren Lee one more time. I understand the fascination with Darren Lee. However, I'm not giving up more than a 6th-round pick for Darren Lee. And remember, if you pick up Darren Lee, you're talking about a guy that's currently set to be in the final year of his rookie contract. So you would have to pick up his 5th-year option. And I don't know how much faith you have in picking up the 5th-year option in Darren Lee. I would think if he was worth this 5th-year option, the Jets would have picked it up. They didn't. So what are you going to give up for Darren Lee to have him for potentially one season in Pittsburgh? And that's why I understand the fascination with him, but unless Darren Lee's outright cut, and you have to ask yourself, why in the hell would the Jets cut him on a cheap final year of his contract if they can't trade him? It's not like he's costing him an arm and a leg, so why not keep him, make him play special teams if you can't get a 6th-round pick for him there? So people need to get Darren Lee out of their mind as far as I'm concerned. What did you think about the rest of the questions, Alex?
Yeah, I agree. I'm not too crazy about Darren Lee. Just draft a guy who helped for team control a lot longer. That's probably a similar player. In terms of how do you justify or evaluate, trading up or staying, it's just all in the draft grade. Depends on the compensation, depends on the draft grade. It depends on where you like Devin Bush. And if you don't take Devin Bush, what's your plan B? How do you approach the rest of the draft? If you're comfortable with that plan B, then maybe you don't do the trade. If you're not comfortable with that, then you do the trade. But that's a hard answer to try to answer concretely. Do
you like Bush enough to trade up for him a couple spots?
Yes.
Would you give up your second for that?
Does that guarantee I get Devin Bush?
Yeah, I mean, if it cost you swapping first and this year's second to go up and get Devin Bush, would you do it? I don't know.
If second's tougher. The third, yes. The second would be, I'd have to think about that.
I mean, third, you have 2 third-round picks, right? So, I mean, it's a little bit easier to part with one of them, I think.
Yeah, I agreed.
So you even if it's your first of your scheduled thirds, which I guess would be 66, would you trade your 66 and your first tomorrow to move up to get Devin Bush?
Yeah, I think I would.
All right, interesting. Okay, let's see here. Where are we?
Well, we're almost. I think we're going along on the show. Do you want to say maybe some of the
I can get long-winded here. All right. In the meantime, check out everything that's on SteelersDepot.com. You can follow me on Twitter at SteelersDepot. Follow Alex Kozora on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. You can email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. And I think that's it. We'll be back on Friday. We'll tell you where the Steelers have been as far as the Pro Day circuit goes, and I'm sure we'll have a few more things to discuss as well. So if you want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit that donate button, upper right navigational bar. If you want an ad-free version of the site, please go to SteelersDepot.com and hit ad-free. For $25, you can have a year access to SteelersDepot.com without any ads. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.